Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Into the Fire, where every single week we are just trying to cover hot topics and clear some of the smoke away from those really hot fires and maybe burning an organization. But,
Absolutely.
Here with my man, star of the show, I guess. I don't know. You're just Rob Reed, everybody.
Yeah.
You know who this guy is right now. If you're following him on LinkedIn, if you're not, follow him on LinkedIn. Follow him on Twitter, Instagram. Follow Bison Fire Protection on Facebook, and you'll see the updates and all the little golden nuggets of knowledge that Rob shares with us every single day. I mean, I personally, I love it. It's great. Number one, seeing such good education from you, consistency in content. It's tough to do that. So kudos to you for keeping that up, man.
Well, you know what? And I've really been enjoying the show, working with you, Ryan, of course. But, you know, the feedback that I've been getting, the messages, you know, I've had people that I've never met sending me direct messages on LinkedIn telling, you know, how much they are enjoying the show and what they're getting from it. And I just love the opportunity to have those interactions outside of what we're doing right here and share some of that knowledge. I mean, because I've always said the school of hard knocks is always open for business. And I'm thinking I've gone from school to university because the knocks keep coming. But, you know, it's just great to be able to share what I've learned and, you know, hopefully get some feedback from people so that I can continue to learn.
Agreed. And that's the cool thing about doing the shows is that, you know, when we're out in public and people recognize you and they see you, it's just approach Rob. Like, he's an approachable guy, right? Approachable guy.
Yeah.
So, right. But anyways, let him know what you think about the show. Let him know if there's certain topics that you want him to cover. Let him know if there's certain challenges in your organization that, you know, you want him to dig deeper into or to talk about. Things that he wants to post to the community, ask questions about. But in any case, this thing is so much more enjoyable when you get to interact with people.
100%.
Yeah.
You betcha it is.
Today, maybe we'll interact with some folks about today's topic, because today's topic is all about micromanagement versus blind trust. And, you know, managers, leaders, people in companies, they can either do two things. They can either, you know, be a micromanager and really get their hands in everything and want to be a part of everything. And you know, we know a lot of people like that. I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody does.
Yeah, and then we have on the other side of the spectrum people who blindly trust, where they give too much trust to folks. And then there's problems associated with that. So micromanagement, blind trust. Where do you fall on that spectrum, my man?
You know what? If I was to take a good hard look at myself, I'm going to say that I probably fall more towards the blind trust side of things, where, you know, you put people in place, you trust them to do their jobs. And you know, some lessons learned over the years is to, one of the managers here says all the time, trust but verify. And that is such an important thing and a lesson that I've learned, in some cases the hard way, because, you know, I'm not a micromanager. You can ask anybody here. I'm not the one that's sitting on their doorstep saying, have you got this project done? Where is this? You know, all that. I'm falling more to the, okay, I give you a task, go get her done. And then I continue on with the next task that I have for myself. And I almost need to sometimes check in a little more often. Right. You know, and I've gotten better at finding the balance in both, because I don't want to be the guy that's in the room going, where is this? Or firing the email. How come, you know, where is this project? How come it's not done yet? Now, you got to also hold people to a goal and a time. Yeah. But that's one thing.
Correct.
It's another thing asking them about it 15 times in that time period.
Yeah, that's,
you know,
I love the honesty and the fact that you have said you blindly trust, and that's gotten you into trouble sometimes.
It has. Absolutely, it has.
Like, if you're comfortable talking about it, like, what kind of trouble does blindly trusting get somebody into? If they trust too much and they put so much trust in people and they kind of just let them go, you know, you're essentially hoping that they hold themselves accountable, that they're working on stuff, but sometimes it doesn't go that way. So if you're comfortable talking about maybe some of the things that could go wrong, that'd be great, maybe from your own experience.
I'm going to say that, you know, one of the biggest mistakes, problems that I've run into is, again, I've tasked somebody to do something, and then I get back out there and, you know, I'm meeting with the people, networking, trying to grow the business. And what I don't see happening, because I'm trusting them to do their job, is things are starting to crumble a little bit behind, right? And then you got to turn around and go, well, we started this project 6 months ago. Why isn't it done yet? Right? Or how come when we put this in place, it fell apart? And, you know, so all that building and all that process needs to be in place. And yes, you know, again, lessons learned the hard way over you know, 20 years in business almost here, to check in, right? Make sure that these things are being done. And, you know, and it's funny. I mean, this happened not that long ago, in the last couple of years. And the couple of the managers said, why did you allow that to happen? And I mean, both, in a couple of cases, both of them said, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. You don't have to. You don't have. I said, no. I mean, if I'm asking you to be honest with me, I got to be honest with you. Yeah. If we're going to trust each other, I've got to answer this. And, I said, in all honesty, for myself, it was a blind spot. We all have our blind spots, Ryan. And in this particular case, my blind spot was the fact that when I hire someone to do it, I trust them to do it.
Yes.
And I wasn't trust but verify.
Right.
Which was, like I say, a fantastic line that one of my managers uses all the time. And I've adopted the line, but I'd already picked up the behavior prior to that.
That's right. I think that one of the things you mentioned, which I think is very important, is that a lot of leaders, managers, they think they got to know it all. They think they got to be the best. And I think we want to always strive our hardest to be the best at whatever it is we're doing. Try to be the best in our role, try to be the best in a company. But in our desire to be the best, it raises up our ego. So for yourself, being able to say, like, I blindly trust, which means that I got to bring in people who are maybe really strong managers, right? Who can maybe balance out the culture and the organization. Because if it was just you and you were blindly trusting people, maybe some things will fall off the rate, or some things will fall off the conveyor belt.
Absolutely.
Right? So you have to bring in a manager who maybe can balance you out a little bit, which I think you've done.
Yep.
Right? We have great managers in Bison Fire Protection who, are great at motivating the people, are great at, verifying a lot of folks.
You know what, Ryan? And you make a good point of bringing in, and you know what, we brought in one or two. But the bigger thing that we've done is spending the time developing the people that are here, making them better managers. Focused on that part, because you know what? Every time you bring in someone new, what's that going to do to your culture? How does it shake up? So you got to be very, very careful about who you're bringing into your company. Because if your response to every problem is to bring in somebody new, you're never going to solve your problems. In fact, you might make them worse. But if you take the time to invest in your people, bring them up, teach them to be better managers, better supervisors, just better technicians. Again, I've talked about training in the past, but work with these people. They're your family. They're your team. Like, invest in the people you have. Now, obviously, there are going to be people that sometimes just don't want to come up with you.
Of course.
Live with that. Make your choices. Try to bring them along. We've talked about in, previous episodes, if you got someone toxic, yes, you got to make that decision. But invest in your people, because if your answer every time is to go outside and get somebody new,
what kind of message does that send?
Well, what kind of manager, what kind of leader are you?
Exactly.
Because you haven't been able to lead your people because you have to keep going out.
That's right. I agree.
Very simple.
Investing in yourself, right? Self-actualization, always focusing on trying to improve yourself, picking up new knowledge, new traits, being hungry for new information. We talked about this on a previous episode, always being curious. How can I, asking better questions. How can I be a better manager? How can I trust while holding my people accountable? What information do I need to have? And investing in that, in your people, is critical. And you've talked about this, where I want to teach my managers, my people, to be managers. So I want to teach them about the importance of accountability, the importance of conflict, the importance of trust. And last episode we talked about this, where it was all about Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, and we continue to mention that because it's a common theme here at Bison. And for us, it's about training people. It's about bringing in good people to continue to add to the team, and about balancing each other out, right? So that we are holding ourselves accountable. And I think that in our desire to grow the strongest company possible, we really need to create like an army of people who believe in the same thing.
Right.
But to go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is blind trust and micromanagement, what happens if in our desire to grow a strong company, we have people who are micromanaging? I'm sure you've seen that.
Absolutely.
What happens if someone's micromanaging their team?
Well, you know what? Before we even get into that, kind of, you made a number of great comments there, but from a CEO, manager, supervisor point of view, what people have to really develop within themselves is self-awareness. You know what? You got to start finding, where are your strengths and recognize them. Find your weaknesses, recognize them. And if you have a weakness, find a way of backfilling it. Right? And if you have a strength, find a way of making it stronger.
Double down on it.
Absolutely. But, to get back to your question here now, what does a micromanager do to a team? Well, do you have trust? You're not building trust with a team if a guy's micromanaging.
Good point.
Secondly, how are they able to bring their team forward? How does your manager, your supervisor, the staff member grow as an employee? How do they grow as a person if you are in the way? Because you're in the way. You're not allowing them to do their job, right? If they're doing their job, if you're allowing it, if you're letting them make mistakes, correcting them, I mean, you're not letting them run wild, with the mistakes, but you got to make sure that, everyone learns from a little bit of pain here and there. So, we have to go through that and let them go through it.
Yeah.
And if they're good people, they'll go, oh, oops.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They'll come to you. If you've built the trust factor, they'll come to you and say, I've made a mistake. But if you're micromanaging, you're telling them you don't trust them, you don't think they can do the job, right? You're stifling your business from going forward. 100% stifling your company.
There's a lot of CEOs out there, a lot of them, who micromanage a little too much. And the reason for that is that they believe that it's my company. I built this company. I know it's best. I know the industry the best. I know my clients the best. I know. And I've worked with a lot of them. And I love them all because they all love their companies and they want to do their best. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to do our best. None of us wake up first thing in the morning saying like, how can I make someone's life miserable? We're all just trying to do our best, right?
Exactly.
Well, maybe there are people like that. I don't know. If they are, stay the heck away from me.
I know.
But there's a lot of CEOs out there who micromanage. And I never realized this because I know that there's a lot of micromanagers, but I never realized this. But it always just comes down to the fact that, as you said, they just don't trust their employees to do a good enough job. If I were to ask these CEOs, do you trust your people? They would say yes. But your actions say something completely different.
Right, absolutely.
So is it just as simple to say like micromanagers don't necessarily trust their people to do the job correctly?
I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't know that, like you said earlier, people aren't setting out to be that way. But, and I said this in a prior episode as well, people have to be able to fire themselves from their previous job, right? Because how do you move up? How do I promote a manager? And I've had this conversation with my guys and the ladies here and said, how can I move you up if you can't backfill your role? Well, they can't move up if I'm micromanaging and preventing them from moving up. Right? You know what I mean? They need to be able to grow. And part of the growth, I said before, is making a few mistakes. Now, nothing catastrophic, but they're going to make a few mistakes here and there. And you've got to allow it, and they have to have the trust of when they've made the mistake, coming into your office and having that chit chat with you. And this is actually a really good conversation. This happened the other day. One of my managers came in and said, you know what? One of the ladies in admin came to him and said, you know what? We've had a problem. I made this little mistake. And to her mind, it was a big mistake. But she sat down with him, walked through what happened and why it happened. And he said, okay, yeah, that's not a big deal. This is how we fix it. This is what we go on. And he said to me, honestly, it wasn't that big a problem. And he didn't make her feel bad about having made the mistake.
Love that.
And I said to him, you know what you've done here? You've allowed her to come back to you next time.
Yes.
You've taught her that when she had a problem, she could bring it forward, which she very comfortably did. And instead of being given shit for what she's done, she was given support.
Yes.
So when something happens again, she's not going to try and hide it.
That's right.
And how powerful is that?
So powerful. And we have to check ourselves, man. Like, it's easy to want to give somebody heck because they did something wrong. And I always think that is sometimes the natural response to people, where if I screwed up, it's like, why'd you screw up? And the reason I know that is because I work in a lot of different organizations and I see that. But having that ability to have that trust, to want to facilitate learning in every opportunity, I think that's quite what's the word I'm looking for? Not advanced, but it's a sign of maturity, of maturity in the business, of comfort with who you are, and knowing that what you're trying to do is not make them feel bad, but keeping that in mind to say, this is a learning opportunity.
Well, I think we're almost conditioned, from a young age, that when we do something wrong, we're going to get in trouble for it.
That is true.
Right? Yeah. And that carries through from being a child all the way through to your teens and into the business world, that, you've learned that every time you've made a mistake, you're getting in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes, like you say, a certain level of maturity to do two things. One, bring it forward.
Yeah.
But secondly, from a manager-supervisor point of view, a level of maturity to not have that knee-jerk reaction and go, you know what, you just, and give it to them. Sit down and say, well, what happened and why?
Yeah.
Okay, what did we learn from it? How do we fix it?
Yeah.
Right? Don't bring me your problems after.
Of course.
Or don't hide it from me because I can't help you.
What a great way to build trust, though, with your employees.
Yeah.
Knowing that you don't have to ever be scared. If you make a mistake, I don't have to be scared of coming to you and saying, listen, like, Rob, I made this mistake, and, here's what I did. I'm not too sure how to correct it. I figured I'd let you know, and maybe we could figure it out together. Collaboration, like trust, like that's powerful, as opposed to me sitting here anxious saying, oh, I made a mistake. I'm going to get in so much trouble. And then you got to find out on your own, and you find out and you're like, Ryan, how come you didn't find out about this?
Yeah.
Like then you're a little upset because you're just like, well, I had to find this out on my own.
Yeah.
But you know what though? It goes both ways.
Yeah.
If I don't trust, if I don't feel that level of comfort, I'm not coming to you.
Yeah.
Right.
And how could we have gotten in front of it earlier?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a small problem would have remained a small problem, but now it's a big problem because it festered.
That's right.
But if we're going to sit here and talk team, right? Truly talk team, then we have to be able to sit back and live it. And live it is being able to have the trust. Living it is being able to have the good conflict. We've talked about that. Living it is having the commitment to fixing it, having the commitment to work with your staff. If you're doing all those sort of things, you know what? We're moving the team forward, and we're doing it positively.
That's right.
We're not hampering people or creating a fear. And again, the fear coming from micromanagement, bringing it back to micromanaging. If you know your boss is micromanaging, you're afraid to take steps because you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Talk about, again, hampering the team. But from a CEO's point of view, okay, if I'm micromanaging every one of my people, am I out front looking for new opportunities? Right?
Nope.
Am I being visionary?
It's a good point.
Right?
That's a very good point.
What am I doing for my team?
That's such
what
a good
am I
point.
bringing to the company?
That's such a good point, because there's a lot of CEOs. Like I said, I know there's a lot of CEOs. Some of you are probably watching this. Yeah. You micromanage too much. You guys are crazy micromanagers. And while you think you're doing a good job micromanaging your employees, you're actually doing a really bad job of being a CEO, because it's your job to be the visionary. It's your job to set the vision. It's your job, as we say, to have the overarching view of the company, to realize problems that are going on, to be an overarching problem solver. But you don't have the ability to do that if you're micromanaging so many people. Instead, you're just in the weeds with people when you need to be in the clouds and dirt. You got to be both in the clouds and in the dirt at the same time.
Right.
But far too many CEOs they're covered in dirt, man.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, there are critical things a CEO should be doing. First one, of course, managing finances. Not managing, but observing, checking in, making sure that your finances are in good shape. You need to be building and developing the culture. You need to be growing your people. And what I mean by growing your people is growing their skills, right? Not growing your staff. I mean, taking it from 50 to 100.
Right.
That's two different things. But growing your people, we talked about it earlier this episode.
That's right.
The other thing, what is your vision, right? You've got to be bringing a vision. You've got to be looking for opportunity, right? And not every opportunity is a yes. But if you're not looking for anything, even the ones that you would have said no to,
Right.
What are you doing?
True.
What are you doing for your team?
That's right.
You've stagnated the entire operation.
You know what's funny? I kind of want to talk about this because it's interesting, but I find personally that micromanaging, CEOs who micromanage, I believe they do it out of fear.
I would agree.
And the reason they do it out of fear is twofold. Number one, because they fear that their people are going to make a mistake, which could open them up to risk in business. But the second one is fear that they don't know what to do to grow their company. And that could be a little bit controversial, but I've noticed this a lot. And I see a habit in the fact that they feel comfortable working in the weeds and working on these minor things when they need to be working on these major things, such as vision. Where are we going to contribute in the community? How do I build my brand? How do I solve these big problems in the company, this interdepartmental conflict? What do I do? How do I level up? Well, those are all hard things that require me to take a deep look inside and say, like, how do I improve? But instead, it's much easier for me to go in and say, well, let me tinker with this proposal a little bit, and let me show you how this is done in the kitchen, and let me show you how this is done. CEOs who major in minor things don't focus on getting the big stuff done.
You're right. And I've said this before. You have to be comfortable with firing yourself.
Have to, man.
Right? And the transitions, we've talked about, a technician becoming a supervisor and how difficult that transition is because it's a different mindset.
Absolutely.
Right? Or the supervisor transitioning to a managerial, that managerial type of role.
Yeah.
Because, again, that's a big transition. And I've watched people so many times, they struggle with this and they struggle with it because they haven't fired themselves from the previous role. And part of going forward, exactly what you said, they are afraid of what they don't know going forward. They have to be able to trust now a new group of people, a new team that they're on that will help them get through that. And I'm going to say it's the same thing for a CEO. Because you're transitioning again from the smaller company, you've done everything, to mid-sized company where you got 3 or 4 managers, maybe more,
Right.
To a large company where you've got a team of managers, and you have to be able to keep firing yourself from those previous roles. It's so important. And if you're not sure what to do next, guess what? Your managers are in the same boat.
That's right.
Now, your job, of course, is to help transition them upwards. But your job is to find people that'll help you get upwards.
Correct.
And we can talk about reading the books day in and day out, but reading a book and doing it are definitely 2 different things.
Correct.
Eventually, you got to put the book down and go, time to go, do.
Yeah.
And you got to find either like-minded CEOs, people that can support you, and start doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Live it. If you're not living it, all it is the theoretical part.
Of course. You've mentioned this before. What was it? I don't remember. It was from a previous episode. It was something about the chef and the cookbook, or
Yeah, well, it's one thing to read the cookbook. It's another thing to be a chef.
exactly. That's exactly what it comes down to.
Yeah, very
Right?
simple.
You got to cook. You got to cook in order to understand the recipe. I can sit there and read the recipe all I want, but you got to actually do it. And that's how you learn from experience.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think a great takeaway, and we don't really pre-plan these shows. We like to just have a very flowing conversation, a good dialogue. But something that I would really love to almost codify and figure out, maybe something that we can incorporate here in Bison, is how do we increase self-awareness of all of us, so that we're self-aware of whether or not we're micromanaging, self-aware of whether or not we're putting blind trust in people, and how do we ensure that we are being self-aware of ourselves to make sure that we're doing the best job possible. Like, what questions would I ask myself at the end of the day to ensure that I did the best job possible?
Well, there's a number of ways to answer this, but I'm going to tell you what I've been doing over the last while, and I've talked about this at every one of our management meetings. There's a number of things that we do, but I always come in with a question. Right? It's usually, something, business related. Is it but related to themselves, Interesting. The last question I asked at the last managers meeting, name 3 people, living or dead, that you would love to have dinner with.
Interesting.
Right? And so each manager had to do, come back with 3 people that they wanted to spend time with, have dinner with. And it was so interesting as we get to know each other, how many people talked about their ancestors, their own personal family tree, and how invested they were in their family, right? Some of them, talked about different characters from history that they wanted to talk, meet with, or even somebody currently living that they want to spend some time with. But what happens from that? Why do I do that? It's really simple. It allows us to get to know each other, because the better the answer, the more they trust each other, the better the answer we get, because they're exposing themselves.
That's right.
Right? They're showing a piece of their heart. Interesting. Now, how does a team work together? When we become people together. When we're not just a coworker that 9 to 5s it. When we truly know that, this particular guy has a Scottish heritage, and his heritage is important to him. Right? Or this particular guy has this heritage, or he has this interest. The other question I ask every meeting without fail, what are you grateful for? Interesting. And I can tell you that when we first started this, it was, I got very bland answers because the team didn't know each other, right? And they didn't trust each other. But as that came in, and now I get some really, really incredible answers, like, what am I grateful for today? And I asked them, actually just a few weeks ago, guys, why am I asking this question? And a couple of them still shrugged their shoulders. And I said, because no matter what happens in your day, no matter how bad things are going, no matter how terrible your day happens to be, there's always something to be grateful for. And that is so important to make sure that you recognize that there are always things to take some joy from and to be grateful for. Take that time to think about that. But as we do it, the team learns and grows, and we've become people. We've become friends, and that doesn't mean that we spend every waking hour outside of work together.
Of course.
But we've gone from co-workers to people that know each other and respect each other.
Man, I kind of had some epiphanies there. I thought it was really cool because a few points that you mentioned there really resonated with me as a marketing guy. We've talked about this marketing philosophy. Marketing is so complex and we make it so hard, but in the end, marketing is so simple. It comes down to some of the three things at the very beginning when you're building a brand. Know, like, trust.
Yeah.
Know, like, trust works on the outside, but just as you've identified, it works on the inside. Right?
It has to.
You're talking about people knowing each other, and as we know each other, we trust each other. Well, as we know each other, we start to like one another. We start to get along with one another. Yeah, I'd have a beer with this person. I'd have a glass of wine with this person. Absolutely. Know, like, trust works externally, but it works internally, and we need to do that internally. And by you asking those questions, it makes us more aware of ourselves, because it's forcing us to take a deep look inside ourselves. And who am I? What do I like? What do I not like? What am I grateful for? All these questions. The more questions you ask about yourself, the better you get to know yourself, but the better we get to know everyone else.
Right.
So asking great questions of your team enables them to think deeply about themselves, but about them knowing others. And I think that's such a great takeaway, man. I love that.
It has been huge in bringing a team together. The other interesting part about this is, we recently just hired another person to the management team, and we were just having this talk last week. I love my staff because they're such a fountain of material for me for the show. But we got talking about that a little bit, and he said one of the reasons that I was attracted to the company is because of what I see online, the image, the discussions, what you guys talk about, and all the different things that we're putting out there all the time. And I said, now that you've been with us for a short amount of time, do you believe that we're living it, or do you believe it's just a bunch of internet hype? And he looked at me and says, no, we absolutely live it.
Love it, man.
Because he's in the meetings, he's hearing us talking about it. It's not a bunch of, like I say, of internet hype.
Hell yeah.
And that's important.
That's the thing that I've always pushed, is that we're authentic. Because there's nothing worse than doing a show and talking about all this stuff and being like, oh, they're all believe in accountability and culture and trust, and oh, it sounds like a great place. And they come inside and it's just like, oh, it's like taking a bite out of this like nice red shiny apple, biting into it, and it's rotten in the middle. It's like, oh, well, this isn't what it appears to be at all. But it's about living it and breathing it. Authenticity is so key. I love that.
Absolutely. And anyone can do it.
Yeah, anybody.
Anyone can do it. But you got to, at one point, like I said before, put down the book and start doing the walk.
Yes.
Walk and the talk. That is so important.
Man, such a great conversation, man. Seriously. We could sit here forever. We try to time cap these to like 20 minutes to 30 minutes. But our stage manager here, Tanya, she's getting hard on us. She's telling us we gotta wrap it up, guys. Wrap it up.
She wants to go for breakfast.
She does, I know. Well, thank you, everybody, again, for joining us on this week's episode of Into the Fire. Again, if you have any comments, please engage with us online. Follow Rob Reed on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Follow Bison Fire Protection on Facebook. Follow Rob on Twitter, and engage with him. Let him know what you think about this episode, what you think about micromanagement, what you think about trust, about anything that we've talked about here. Make sure that you're sharing your opinion, because we love to see that. We love to see the engagement. Absolutely. And if you see him, in public walking around or doing some grocery shopping, let him know that you saw him on the show. I think that's it's always good to connect with people in our community. And that's what
I always enjoy those little conversations. It's usually only a minute or two that we chat. Because everyone's got somewhere they're going anyway.
Absolutely.
But I've had people walk up to me in a coffee shop and, hey, I saw what you did the other day, and I really loved that.
Yeah.
Nice. It's just so fantastic. It makes me feel great, but. Like I say, the little ego boost that, someone's watching and enjoying. But the fact is, honestly, Ryan, that we've made their world a better place. You know what? We've made it a safer place because they've learned something from what we're doing, and they're enjoying it.
You got it.
So what you're saying there, 100% agree.
Totally.
If you see me, stop me, say hello. I love to chat about this stuff with anybody, or jump online. Again, I don't mind answering the messages. I really don't.
And challenge Rob. Challenge him on some of his perspectives, because you are a sponge. You love to learn. And if there's experts out there, people who know better on something, let him know. Send him a message on LinkedIn. DM him and let him know. And we'll definitely cover certain topics or cover certain things that you bring up on the show. It's a two-way dialogue here.
It sure is.
In any case, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Into the Fire, where every single week we're just covering hot topics and trying to clear the smoke away to find some clarity. In any case, we'll do this again next week then.
You betcha. We'll see you all next week.
Take care.